Controversy again splices up the Winston. It's the fastest field in history for the world's richest race. A golden anniversary in sprint car racing and a triumphant return for a hydroplane hero. All this and more next on Motorweek Illustrated.
Motorweek Illustrated is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will. And by Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you.
This is Chris McClure, along with Tom Michaels and Chris Economaki, standing by at Indianapolis with the latest on the 500. It's coming up.
I'm Bob Varsha in Mexico City, where I'll have a preview of this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix as Formula One comes to North America.
Hi, I'm Bill Adam at Lime Rock, Connecticut, and I'll be back with a preview of Monday's Camel GT race.
And to complete our all-around-the-racing world approach this week, I'm Dave Despain along with Ken Squire, and for this very special edition of Motorweek Illustrated, we've come to Charlotte Motor Speedway where, Ken, the Winston Cup crowds are getting their money's worth.
Oh, yeah, record crowds, too, David. The preliminaries have all been that way, and the word is that we're in for new attendance marks with the running of both the Champion Filters 300 tomorrow, the Grand National race, and then on to the Winston Cup's 30th annual Coca-Cola 600 on Sunday. Right now, let's meet the man who's on the pole for that event come Sunday.
Fords took the front row, Chevys the second. Fastest Ford was Alan Kawicki, pole sitter for the second race in a row at Charlotte, and taking home $53,000 for the effort. Mark Martin will start outside of row one. Ken Schrader and Darrell Waltrip start third and fourth. The crowd obviously pleased that popular young Alan Kawicki will start up front Sunday.
And here he is with all the champagne washed off and looking pretty happy about that pole run. You're going to lead all 400 laps, win this thing wire to wire?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think the competition is a little bit too tough for that, but as long as we lead the last one, we'll be happy.
Have you made a lot of changes on that car since qualification for Sunday 600?
Well, a few little changes. You know, we're going to race a different engine, and gear ratio will probably be a little bit different, and slightly different springs in the back. Other than that, it's pretty similar.
Alan Kawicki, pole sitter, good luck on Sunday as we wrap up this week of speed at Charlotte, a week that began last Sunday with the $200,000 to win Winston. And with that kind of prize money, you know it'll be fireworks. It all came in two big explosions.
In segment one of the unique three-segment race, Kyle Petty hit the wall hard enough to total an in-car camera. He was okay. Rusty Wallace won the first segment. Darrell Waltrip took the second. That set the stage for the second bit of excitement. Darrell jumped out front for the final 10-lap shootout, but with Wallace chasing and all that money on the line, you knew it had to happen. Sure enough, Rusty under Waltrip, who goes a-spinning with just 2 laps to go. Waltrip taking a trip across the infield, and in slow motion, you'll see that the two cars barely touched, but it was enough contact to cost DW a $200,000 check. A mixed chorus of cheers and boos as Wallace becomes the 5th different winner in 5 runnings of the Winston. Then the emotions flared off the track. The two teams got into a shoving match on the way to victory lane, and the drivers launched the predictable verbal attack.
A lot of guys, you know, they let greed overcome speed, and that's what happened.
No, he's mad right now. The crews don't have any reason to be mad at each other. They weren't driving the car. If Darrell's got a problem, he needs to come see me.
Indeed, it was the crewmen who got the discipline for kicking Wallace's cars that went to victory lane. Sandy Jones of the Tide team is on probation through Sunday. And for shoving Jones, Todd Parrott of the Wallace crew got a suspension through Friday.
And as for the drivers, Ken, they had their obligatory post-bump cool-off meeting with NASCAR, shook hands and said everything's fine.
Well, they're not exactly holding hands over in the garage area, let me tell you that. On Tuesday morning, on a Charlotte talk show in the morning, Darrell Waltrip was heard saying that he'd like to see Rusty Wallace take that $200,000, put it up, he'd put up $200,000, and they'd meet for a 10-lap showdown. How do you like that one?
I'd pay $1 a lap to watch that.
Probably
on Saturday, the Grand National Stars are going to have at it here, and they tuned up for that affair with a Fender Flailer Saturday night.
The fans get an eye full at the fairgrounds in Nashville as the point leader, Rob Moroso, goes up against the wall, then right back across the traffic. Is he going to make it? Nah, Tom Harrington and Max Prestwood both getting broadside. Flames from beneath Harrington's hood contributing to the red flag, but everybody was okay despite the spectacular action. Number 36, Kenny Wallace, led this race until he spun out. That left Rick Mass to win it over local favorite Bobby Hamilton.
Really pulling for Bobby. I know Bobby's had some trouble this year, and, you know, everybody goes through that, especially in the Bush Division. You just don't come in here and start winning. And, you know, Bobby's taking his knocks, and I was watching him in the mirror. I was just running enough to keep him behind me. And there's two guys there at the end in front of me. I'm not sure what they were going to do, so I was just kind of taking my time. But I was really pulling for Bobby. You know, I knew he's a local guy. I knew the crowd would go crazy if he won, but I didn't want that to happen.
The start of the new Sportsman Series on Wednesday is most auspicious. You will remember from my scrapbook days that the very first NASCAR race was run in 1949 right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was won by Glenn Dunaway. Oh, no, he came across the finish line first, but then hours later, Jim Roper was given the win after Dunaway's car was disqualified. Guess what happened in the first Sportsman race this past Wednesday?
On Wednesday, Charlotte hosted the debut of NASCAR's new Super Speedway Sportsman Division. And there was a sense of deja vu once race-long leader Ward Burton of Halifax, Virginia had cut a tire and spun out. Here's the run to the finish. Michigan's Jack Sprague in blue and yellow holds off Tim Bender in red in a classic Super Speedway showdown. There was joy in the Sprague camp for about 5 hours. Then Jack was disqualified for running illegal heads, and New York's Bender was named the winner.
It's kind of exciting to come and race here because, you know, you've seen your heroes in the past come here and race and put on a show. And you know, we watched the Winston on TV last Sunday, you know, and see a race like that and then come here and race her. It's pretty neat.
Well, the punchline to that story is Bender is a snowmobile racer. Two weeks ago, he was racing up in the ice and snow. Before you get out of here, a quick prediction for Sunday.
I'll go with experience, and I see Waltrip winning again this year.
Thank you, Ken Squire. And we're going to get to the Indy 500, that other big Memorial Day classic, in a moment. But first, this sad note. While the stock car fraternity celebrated this week of speed here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the family and friends of Don Williams were in mourning. Williams was injured in a preliminary to the 1979 Daytona 500 and has been in a coma for 10 years. He died Sunday in Florida. He was 42.
95,000 miles and no problems.
Because Quaker State exceeds every single car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
8 years after their first battle, two fighters resume one of boxing's great rivalries. Now they step into the ring again for the long-awaited rematch. This time, the war is on. Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hitman Hearns go to battle on June 12th at Caesar's Palace.
Ladies and gentlemen, Budweiser presents the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
This is one kind of lightweight affordable hedge trimmer. Simple, but not easy. This is another kind. Easy, but not simple. Now there's a new kind. Introducing the Homelite HT17 hedge trimmer. It's lightweight, easy to handle. There's no electrical cord, so it's simple to use. The new Homelite gas-powered HT17. World's first affordable hedge trimmer that's both simple and easy. From Homelite. Everything you need to get your lawn done right.
Members of the National Council of Corvette Clubs. To them, there's no car but a vet and no tire but a Goodyear Eagle ZR. We invited them to a showdown. Dunlop D40 M2 against Eagle ZR. Slaloms on wet and dry roads. Hard cornering. Braking. Comfort and noise on the highway. Which tire would they buy now? All 10 pick the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
Motorweek is at Charlotte Motor Speedway where the stock cars will rumble on Sunday. Meanwhile, the 73rd running of the Indy 500 will feature the fastest field in history. But barring an 11th hour driver change, it will not include a famous former winner. Our coverage begins with Bump Day. The last round of qualifying, here's Tom Michaels.
The second weekend of qualifying at Indianapolis, the weather much better than first anticipated. 26 spots are filled, but not yet in the field. A couple of former winners, Danny Sullivan and Johnny Rutherford. 85 winner Sullivan, attempting to drive his pesky Chevy with a right forearm broken in a practice crash 9 days before, quickly becomes the quickest of 5 Saturday qualifiers, averaging over 2:16. To Sunday now, and Rutherford qualifies early. But by late afternoon, he's on the bubble. His old buddy A.J. Foyt rides to the rescue, putting Rutherford in his backup. Lone Star Jr. must wait for his original mount, though, to be bumped, which it is by Rich Vogler. And Rutherford is on the track at the final gun, but all for naught, as the engine blows on the very first lap. So the field is set for Sunday's 500, but without the 3-time champion from Fort Worth, Texas. From Indianapolis, I'm Tom Michaels for Motorweek Illustrated.
The durability of the bent wing Danny Sullivan is source of great speculation. For a race weekend prognosis, here's Chris McClure.
Medically, the repair on Danny Sullivan's arm was relatively simple. A surgically implanted metal plate on the inside and a specially constructed plastic cast on the outside to support the arm. And in order to get him going again, they also had to alter his cockpit.
Very minute, little, just the angle of the gear lever, a little bit of padding, maybe in the seat, cut a little piece out of it, but something that somebody looked down in it wouldn't look any different than Rick's or anything else. The only thing we've got on mine that's a little different at the moment is a little ramp on the steering wheel that kind of locks in here, so I've got something to push on.
Those adjustments got Sullivan back on the track for practice in a week. 9 days after the accident, he qualified. His strength and range of motion for those short bursts of speed were fine. So far, no problem.
No, you're not moving it that much, but you want to be able to in traffic, stopping in the pits, getting in and out of the pits if something goes wrong. You just want to feel comfortable that you can move when you have to, because in the course of a 500-mile race, you never know what's going to be thrown up in front of you.
Danny Sullivan will start the 500 on Sunday, but if he can't go the distance, they have Jeff Brabham standing by to take the seat. The question is, in the heat of battle, can Danny Sullivan give up the seat easily?
I think so. You know, I'm not going to just flog it around for the sake of being out there and trying to be some kind of a hero. You know, I wanted to qualify to see what I was capable of doing and getting it into the show so that I didn't have to start last. And I'm going to try to start the race, and if it's a problem, there's no point to continue because I'm not going to really have a shot at winning it. I'd like to, you know, I guess dream-wise, I'd like to think I'd like to get it up into the top 3 by the end of the 500 miles.
That's a dream that may not be that far-fetched. By race time on Sunday, it'll be nearly 18 days since Danny Sullivan broke his arm. He's relatively confident, as are the doctors attending him, that he will have the strength and the motion and certainly the willpower to go the distance in the 500. We'll see. From Indianapolis, I'm Chris McClure.
And we go from one Chris to another with a comment on a continuing trend at America's most famous racetrack. Here is Chris Economaki of National Speed Sport News.
The Indianapolis 500, America's greatest race. But what about things American in this race? Every car in the race for the past several years has been of British manufacture, and the most popular engine, the Cosworth and the Indy Chevy, are made in England, as is the Judge. And the newest engine, Porsche, is from Germany. And what of the drivers? 13 of the 33 drivers in this year's race are foreign-born. That includes Mario Andretti and Dominic Dobson. And what about the rookies? Of the 4 rookies that qualified for this year's race, only one, Scott Pruitt, is an American. That means that in the future, there'll be more foreigners. America has only one driver in Formula One and fewer in IndyCar racing. And if present tests work out, the timing and scoring system here next year will be of Australian manufacture. So about the only thing that will always be American and that this cathedral of speed are the dollars that keep luring the foreigners to these shores.
Well, not all the famous names are racing at Indy. Some of them are racing elsewhere, getting ready for Indy. Robbie Unser won the American IndyCar Series opener last weekend. Look for him to head for the Brickyard in the future. We're going to have Indy predictions a little later, and we'll go to Mexico and the Mexican Grand Prix after this timeout.
Cool savings. Ford Ranger's got it. Now you can own America's best-selling compact pickup for under $9,800 when you apply cash back from Ford. Plus, you'll get all these great options, and we'll even throw in factory air. Cool savings on Ford Ranger. Your best quality Ford dealers got it. Your best quality Ford dealer makes it even easier to own America's best-selling compact pickup, Ford Ranger. Now choose the financing that suits you, as low as 2.9%, or take up to $750 cash back. The choice to own the best is yours at your best quality Ford dealer now.
I'm Bob Lee. Sports Center, 11:30 Eastern Time tonight. In the majors, 2 no-hitters thrown by 4 pitchers. Phoenix Suns hoping for some home court magic to continue, and we'll look at the Bulls not named Jordan. Charlie Steiner and I at 11:30. We'll see you then.
We're back at Charlotte Motor Speedway. This is Motorweek Illustrated. All the racing here and at Indianapolis this weekend will be around in circles. So in this segment, let's pay tribute to the road racers. We'll get the outlook first from Mexico and ESPN's man south of the border, Bob Varsha.
Dave, the question here in Mexico is simple. Can anyone stop Team McLaren? They've won 2 of the last 3 races, but given all the public bickering between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost over the last few weeks, I'd say the McLaren boys are going to be fun to watch no matter what. Ferrari is a concerned team, following Gerhard Berger's enormous accident in Italy, Nigel Mansell's breakdown since then, and the fact that the Mexican circuit is the toughest we've seen thus far this year. March and Benetton are 2 of the teams bringing new engine and chassis combinations to Mexico, but unless someone can come up with a winner, when this 3-race North American tour ends in Canada, Formula One might find itself in another McLaren stranglehold. It should be a great race, and I hope you'll join us for it this Sunday here on ESPN. Speaking of derailing a road racing juggernaut, that's exactly what happened last weekend in Summit Point, West Virginia, where IMSA's GTO sedans ended a 6-week vacation. Factory cars from Ford, Audi, and Nissan qualified in the top 6 places, led by Pete Halsmer in one of the Jack Roush-prepared Cougars that have won each of the preceding 3 races this season. Early on, the new Nissans of John Morton and Steve Millen suffered problems, as did Wally Dallenbach's Cougar in Wally's last GTO fling before joining the Roush-Winston Cup effort for the road race at Sears Point. Just before halfway in the 2-hour race, German sports car ace Hans Stuck pushed his all-wheel drive Audi past Halsmer and led the rest of the way. Stuck's teammate and reigning Trans Am champ Hurley Haywood sat quietly through this 5-alarm pit stop, then rolled out and ran down Halsmer for second. The 1-2 sweep in Audi's first GTO victory forced Stuck to make good on a promise to celebrate in true Bavarian style. Now this Memorial Day Monday, IMSA's big GTP cars will be the show at Lime Rock, Connecticut, where Jaguar is expected to debut its top-secret new turbo car. Bill Adam is our man on the scene in Lime Rock. Bill, how about it?
Well, indeed, the story of the weekend will be the Jaguar. The car behind me is the V12 XJR9 that has been good enough to give Jaguar and its drivers leads in their respective championships. However, behind that tarp is the mystery, the secret of the weekend. The new XJR10 will be a 3-liter twin-turbo V6 weapon that Jaguar hopes to use in unseating the Nissan from its position of dominance. A very strong car, and Jaguar is no longer content with these consistent second-place finishes. They want to win. Toyota GTP have also got to be considered here. A car that's been blindingly fast so far this year in qualifying, and this weekend, driven by Lime Rock's own Drake Olson.
Thank you, Bill Adam and Bob Varsha. Now write down a couple of air times because ESPN will have all the action this weekend of the Mexican Grand Prix from Mexico City. And on Monday, the Camel GT race from Lime Rock, Connecticut. Tune in for a great holiday racing weekend. And we'll see what's happening elsewhere around the racing world right after this timeout.
Scotty Parker wins it. Who's it going to be?
Keeping your yard beautiful is pretty tough if you're watering with an old sprinkler like this one. It leaves dry spots in some places, messy puddles in others. Rainbird's new Dancing Waters changes all that. It throws water with a unique pulsing action that sprinkles evenly, much like rain. And because they're so durable, Rainbird backs every Dancing Water sprinkler with a 10-year warranty.
Dancing Waters by Rainbird. For a dealer near you, call 800-635-7500.
It's hard to rely on any of your tools if you can't rely on the ones you measure with. So we build the durability into every tape we make. That's why you don't see people replacing their Lufkin measuring tapes, but why you do see them buying more. Lufkin tapes. From Cooper Tools, the difference between work and workmanship.
This is Motor Week from the Speedway Club overlooking Charlotte Motor Speedway. Our next story, though, comes from Tennessee. Last year, Billy Meyer bought the International Hot Rod Association, moved it to Texas. Now the original owners have bought it back and brought it back to Thunder Valley, right outside of Bristol.
55,000 fans and the quickest pro fields in IHRA history turned out to mark the occasion. Pro stock final, barehanded Darrell Alderman against Warren Johnson. Alderman on the far side got the whole shot, but Wojo made up the difference an inch at a time, won by a fender in 7:56 at 181 miles an hour. In top fuel, Jim Head in the left lane met the points leader, Pat Dakin. Looks like a run right out of the 60s. Both smoked the tires. Each realizes the other is in trouble, tries to get the power back on. Head wins at a very untopped fuel-like 143 miles an hour. And when Scott Kalita failed to show for the funny car final, Tony McCallum could have stroked. Instead, he gave the folks a show. 574 and 247, blowing an engine en route. Congratulations, Tony Mack. He's the first black driver to win an IHRA Pro Final.
We have an interesting motorcycle drag racing story in a moment, but first the Roundy Round and the motocross action.
We'll begin with a Camel Pro Series sweep for the Harley-Davidson factory team. Number 1, Scotty Parker, an easy winner over Doug Chandler and point leader Chris Carr last Sunday. Parker is now 2 for 2 on the mile ovals this year. But in the 5-lap Camel Challenge, it was Carr who carried the Harley colors past Steve Moorhead at the wire. Chris is $10,000 richer for 2.5 minutes work. In motocross, Jeff Stanton wins the 250cc National in Massachusetts. Nothing new there. The pleasant surprise, semi-retired Bob Hanna thrilling the crowd, running third until he sailed over the big Southwick downhill, and the waving flags tell the tale.
All I could see is Bob going through the air. You know, he's 50 feet in the air going to the bottom of the hill. As soon as I landed, I hit the brakes, and I ran over his wheels, is what it amounted to, but I made it through it.
Stanton went on to win. Hanna got right back on the horse that threw him. And in that vein, this pass earned Desert National Funny Bike honors for Vince Testa, but he hit a bump hard enough to pinch a nerve that left him partially paralyzed. After a trip to the hospital to get unpinched, Vince came back to race his longtime hero Marion Owens in the Super Final, and he won it.
I've always read magazines where he was all over the place, winning everywhere. I've had a lot of good weekends, but this one was the weekend.
All right, Vince. Now, on May the 21st of 1939, Williams Grove Speedway, Mechanicsville, Pennsylvania, opened its gates for the first time. If you're any kind of a mathematician, you'll realize that this week marked a golden anniversary for a grand old racetrack.
How has the Grove changed? Ask the guy who won the first feature here 50 years ago.
In them days, we used to run 40-lap features, and then it must have been maybe 15 years, something like that later, but then they dropped them down to 30 laps, so that a lot of times it was a matter of who survived also.
Surviving is still important, Tommy. Some things haven't changed. 50 laps the distance for the 50th anniversary feature. Sammy Swindell leads. Watch Jump and Jack Hodenschild. Can he save it? No, the Wild Child is on his head and out for the night. Kenny Jacobs next to tackle Swindell, gets him two to take the lead. But when Kenny's handling went south, it was Steve Kinzer who swept by to win the anniversary feature. Steve and his wife Dana collect a check for $15,000 at Williams Grove. Over in Columbus, Ohio, the wing sprint action was on the asphalt, but pole sitter Jack Hewitt's crew was struggling to replace a blown engine. They finished just in time for Jack to get run over on the main event start, forcing a restart. But look here, with a lap and a half to go, Hewitt, number 23, down on the bottom of the racetrack, sticks the wheels in the grass. Anticipating the traffic jam ahead of him perfectly, he sweeps by to take the victory. Jack's crew displayed a lot of stick-to-itiveness in keeping their man out there through all that adversity. They pick up our U.S. Air Force Reserve Commander's Performance Award from the 439th Tactical Airlift Wing, Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts.
And on the West Coast, sprint car racing lost a friend Saturday night. Jeff Bagley suffered critical injuries in the main event of the CRA at Ascot Park. He died on Monday at the UCLA Harbor Medical Center.
Members of the National Council of Corvette Clubs. To them, there's no car but a vet and no tire but a Goodyear Eagle ZR. We invited them to a showdown, Dunlop D40 M2 against Eagle ZR. Slaloms on wet and dry roads. Hard cornering. braking, comfort and noise on the highway. Which tire would they buy now? All 10 pick the Dunlop D40 M2. Dunlop outperforms.
How do you keep a major city running smoothly? Atlanta does it with Quaker State Motor Oil. In every fire truck, every police car, every Atlanta city-owned vehicle. The big Q stands for quality.
Choosing the right brand of paint can really drive you up a wall. You know, scrubbable, durable, spatter-free. And guessing about whether or not the quality is there can be one big mess. So don't guess. Ask someone who really knows what it takes to make great paint. And Ace makes their own. Ace Paint. Don't get mixed up with all the others. Ace 7-Star, our best flat latex house paint, is just $10.99 a gallon.
Our thanks to the Speedway Club and the magnificent Charlotte Motor Speedway for their hospitality for this edition of Motorweek Illustrated. Our next story is a comeback story, and it comes from the world of hydroplane racing. Jim Kropfeld was critically injured in a racing crash last year. He came back last weekend at Houston, Texas, and answered a lot of important questions.
Question number 1, does the costume still fit? The answer brings a smile to Jim's face. Question number 2, is that guy Chip Hanauer still around? Answer, is he ever? Watch as Chip comes off the turn in the middle of the track. Kropfeld exits down low, but drifting wide, and the two old rivals collide. Both boats needed substantial repairs before the final heat of the day, and by now it's obvious Kropfeld has lost none of his bulldog determination. In that final heat, Jim Kropfeld brings Miss Budweiser home a winner, completes a remarkable comeback, and answers the biggest question of all.
I had a little doubt in my mind as if I still had the competitive spirit to go out there and drive as hard as you have to and with these guys like Chip and Larry and the rest of them. But I'm glad Chip and I hooked up the way we did, and I would have been probably as happy if I would have been second. Chip would have been first, because I found out that I can still do it, and that was the big thing on my mind.
Competitive spirit indeed. Let your mind be at rest, Jim. Congratulations and welcome back. You are our Motorweek Illustrated Racer of the Week.
With that, we are almost out of time. Let's get the final word from Indianapolis now. We'll go back to Chris McClure and friends.
Just a couple of days now until the green flag falls on the 73rd Indianapolis 500. And speculation, the name of the game for at least the next 48 hours. Picking a winner, and that's fraught with its own brand of difficulty. For one pick, let's turn first to Chris Economaki of National Speed Sport News.
Chris, the high speeds mean that the race is going to be won by a fighter. There's a few fighters in the field. Tom Sneva, Al Unser Jr., Emerson Fittipaldi, and my pick, Mario Andretti. His tough luck has got to end one of these days.
Tom Michaels has been on hand at the Speedway with qualifying reports all month. Thomas, what do you make of it?
I really look at it that over the years, even the best teams have not been able to win year after year after year after year. So I don't think it's going to be the Penske team year. But that is the best chassis, along with the Chevrolet engine. Only one other guy's got that. That's Emerson Fittipaldi. And he's shown before he can win a 500-mile race.
My short list is led by Chevrolet Power. A strong nod to Lola chassis, but the 18 a little bit better, I think. It comes from that group, and I think Rick Mears, the favorite, is the man to the checkered flag. Dave?
All right, guys, thank you very much for those words of wisdom. Here at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I'm a little more scientific. My middle name is Alan. I like Alan Kulwicki for the 600, and I'll take Al Unser at Indy. With that, we've got to say goodbye. We'll have the 600 and 500 highlights next week on Motor Week. Remember, our new time will come your way on Thursday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 3:30 Eastern time next Thursday afternoon for Motor Week Illustrated. I'm Dave Despain for Ken Squire and all the Motor Week crew saying thanks to Charlotte Motor Speedway for their hospitality, and we'll see you next week.